Homo sapiens, the modern Homo sapiens came about. About a billion minutes ago, the Christianity came. And about a billion seconds ago was the IBM PC. And about a billion Google searches ago was today morning. So that's the power of Google. That's the power of nothing. I'm not getting paid for talking about Google, but about the internet and the number of searches and all that which is happening. This is what we've all grown up with, at least in my generation, maybe things have changed, which is necessity is the mother of invention. And I always grew up with this thing saying that if you want something, you get it. And technology has actually made it possible. I was thinking that there's one thing which technology has made really, really bad for many people, and one species of people for which technology has been a curse is the sci-fi movie makers, okay? People who write science fiction. Because it's almost impossible to think of something which technology doesn't make it happen today. So it is very, very difficult for somebody to make a sci-fi movie today, and that's why they're not doing good on break. So hold this thought about the necessity is the mother of invention. I'll come back to it. This is a small story of a headset. So in the old time, we used to have a headset which gave me an audio experience. I'll put a nice big screen, 40 inches, 70, maybe 200 inches, and I have great experience. And then came a company, and they created a product called Oculus Rift. So what you see on the right side of the screen is the tomorrow's headset. So this is a headset, which is a virtual reality headset. It fits on your head, and it's got the head-turning capability. So when I look left, it moves. When I look at right, Facebook bought this company for, I think, somewhere around $2 billion, roughly give or take. And they're going to commercialize a virtual reality headset. And the expected commercial price of this product when it comes out truly in masses will be about $200 to $250. It's still available for many people to practice. Lowe's is actually using it in their stores in Canada, that you can wear this headset and walk around these stores and buy merchandise. So it's a true great 100-degree view, great stuff, great innovation in terms of technology, moving from an audio headset from a TV screen to you actually, and I think I wanted to buy this one because my wife doesn't let me watch TV late at night, so it's a great invention. $200. What did Google do to this? And this is what Google produced. This is called Google Cardboard Box. What Google said that if you wanted this, you could actually, after eating your pizza, turn your pizza box into this shape, and there's a nice do-it-yourself video available. And if you happen to have a Google Android phone, 4 inches or more, put the phone into it, it gives you roughly about 70% the same experience as Oculus Rift will give you. How much does it cost? If you could buy a pizza yourself, the leftover is the cardboard box. But if you still couldn't do it yourself, you could buy it for about $10 or $12 on Amazon. So this is the disrupting capability of the technology. We have all talked about it, we all heard about it, but I actually wanted to make a point that it is here and now and not something which we'll see in the future. This is another thing which you need to look at it. There's a company which actually found a business model out of just reading people's silly reviews. We all write silly reviews most of the time. What they did, they said that, I have a crawler. So there's a Google kind of a crawler, which will actually, so every time somebody puts a review on Amazon, this crawler will go and look for only keywords saying, I wish. So wherever it found something called I wish, that is a wish of a user which is not being fulfilled by the current product. And basically, looking at all after I wish, they actually created a kind of a speaker because people wanted to have waterproof speakers. So this is how a waterproof speaker came. Then when they put this product in the market, they said, I wish this was rechargeable. So they made it rechargeable. So it's gone through 3 generations. This company is actually inventing product basis your wishes without having to do a market research. So another kind of innovative. So this is what the global story. Let me come to the India's digital story, and Honorable Minister talked a lot about what is possible. I will possibly try to paint a similar story, if not very different. So if you look at it from an India perspective, this is about 5 million internet users, and I'm not going to talk too much about it, but 95%, that is the stark difference. Globally, less than half of the users access internet through mobile. But in India, about 95% of these users, the new users, actually access internet through mobile. And I'm sure LinkedIn figures will be about half of the LinkedIn users in India must be using it through the mobile. So I think mobile is changing the way we look at the world. And I'll come to the impact of that. The impact on the real commercial market is substantial. We wouldn't have seen Flipkart or Snapdeal do the business volume as we have seen because of the mobile internet. Because e-commerce is nothing new. It's been there. So if you look at the market is going to move from about 2 billion to about 19 billion. So I will not take the story any further. That's the commercial impact, which we all know. You all have phones in your hand. You all, some of them possibly don't keep it anywhere else because it's got some problem with keeping it somewhere else. So this is about the Internet of Things. And if you look at it, the Internet of Things, why is it happening now? It could have happened actually 10 years ago. But over the 10 years, what's happened is that number one is the sensors have become very cheap. So the sensor, which used to cost about $30 to $35, today costs about 30 to 35 cents. So that's one big change which has happened. The bandwidth, we have seen the bandwidth has become almost like 1/20th or 1/30th over the last time. Processing is very cheap. Somebody said that mobile phone is as good as a mini computer. It's actually better than a supercomputer of 25 years ago. Smartphones, ubiquitous wireless coverage, big data, IP6. This was a big limitation. We didn't have enough IP ranges, so now we have got. So this kind of reminds me of a movie which I watched, the Om Shanti Om, and I'll kind of let you remember this dialogue in the movie which said that अगर किसी चीज़ को पूरी शिद्दत से चाहो तो पूरी कायनात आपको उससे मिलाने की साजिश करती है. So that's what is happening in our world. So the whole world is actually, so the cheap sensor, the cheap bandwidth, the cheap smartphone, everything coming together is actually making a lot of things happen. So I talked about the 19 billion e-commerce market. Let me talk about the real social impact and what the entrepreneurs of India could do with that. And that's somewhere which I'll talk about 3 stories and very brief and very interesting stories. The first story is the story of the lunchbox called Chatur. And Chatur because it's actually a clever lunchbox. What this lunchbox does, it basically takes the education in India to a different level. A social project wherein you could actually buy a Samsung phone with a Pico projector. So many of you don't like to buy those because that's about a $60 phone. A $60 phone, but you actually strip off the GPS, the antenna, the Wi-Fi, and all of that. It's about $20. So that's the $20 the cost of a smartphone, of a phone with a Pico projector. You take that smartphone, combine with a flashlight, put either a power source or a battery, a car battery would do, will actually produce a projector which can be used in the classroom to project and teach kids, and the content can be beamed on a 2G or a 3G interface. This is a project which is a live project in India. The cost of doing this one is about $33, about 500,000 plus. Imagine the impact of something which was not. So this is what I call the Indian jugaad mindset, which actually creates an alternate use of a technology which was not designed for the original purpose. So while the Pico projector phone was a big flop as a phone, it has become a big success as an education device. Let me take you to my next story. My next story is about an alarm clock. Some of you, I see people of my age, so you've seen this alarm clock, but most of the time these days people use smartphone as alarm clock. This alarm clock has almost no capability for modern use except that it is round, has a dial, and has 2 needles. And what the innovators have actually done, again a social cause, is converted that into a blood pressure monitor. So they've combined this broken alarm clock with cheap sensors and small microprocessors, and this device, the ASHA workers, which actually earlier, so the ASHA workers community used to go to these small places, people who can't afford the healthcare, they will go there and say, okay, if you have a problem, go visit the hospital. And the journey to the hospital was about 10 to 12 kilometers, and ASHA workers were just referring people to the hospital, and there was a huge queue in the hospital. What this alarm clock does is to an ASHA worker that she can measure the blood pressure and basic temperature, and then she can decide that, do you need to visit the hospital or do you need to stay home? And that has killed about 60% of the queue in the hospital, which are already overcrowded. So that's another second story. And the third one is a commercial product called Nano Ganesh. This is a product which was designed for the farmers in India, in which the farmers use their irrigation pumps few hours of the day, but when they live, the point which they live and the point at which the irrigation pump is installed could be anywhere between 3 to 7 kilometers. And every time they will do a they will do a walk from home to the farm and figure out whether they need to switch on or switch off. Half the time they will go and possibly say, I just need to go to just switch on or switch off a water pump. Nano Ganesh enables that technology through a phone. All you need to do is that you need to do a missed call to a number, and your irrigation pump will either switch on or switch off. So that's another technology which is very, very cheap, alternate use of mobile. So those are the 3 stories which I wanted to leave you with, saying that this is absolutely the alternate use, and all of that are commercially great, if not at least the socially very, very excellent projects. And there could be several uses the people in this room could create of. Necessity is the mother of invention, with which I started, but after looking at all of these things, I actually get reminded saying that possibly that's not the right answer. Necessity to me is just the stepmother of the invention, To me, possibility is the mother of invention. Just because all of these things are possible, I'm pushing my agenda. Because the technology makes it possible, half the time the necessity does not exist. And that's been my learning, saying that the more possibility you create, the more inventive we'll all become. So this is what I can say, that this is the good part of all that which you looked at the technology. Sometimes I feel that the life is all about the good, bad, and the ugly. The movie was released, I think, some 50 years ago. I still remember it fondly. There are always three facets of our life. So I talked about the good part. The bad part, and which is not too much, it's a very, very little bad part which I see here, is that what's the common thing amongst these 4 companies which I have here? I'm sure they're all electronic, social media, and all of that. But one thing which I think is very common from the context which I talked about. Intrusion of privacy. Okay, so that's a great point. But one of the things which I took a stab on is that I put LinkedIn as number 1 because I love it. I'm one of the beta users. I joined LinkedIn when it was in beta stage. All these companies have India as either number 1 or number 2 market on their books. So we are the great user. We are the great consumer, but we are not the one who created these companies. So what I feel is the bad part is that we are not truly inventive and scaling things. And that's why when Dr. Nene talked about it, I find it very fascinating that you got to invent and scale. We are the consumer. And in fact, somebody told me once saying that if you get a service for a free, if any service is to you for free, you're not the user, you're actually the product. So I'm the product for a number of companies, which is what I feel bad. I wish a lot of these companies were born in India. The second one everybody talked about is the education. The statistics for the education, Nishan talked about 66% being non-employable. My worry is that when I went to college, we were taught computer sciences. Okay? Today we are taught information technology. The percentage of people learning computer science versus the percentage of people learning information technology, it is 1:7. For every 1 computer science graduate, we have 7 IT. So we know how to run the car, but we really don't know how to build the car. And I think that's where I have a significant disconnect with our education system. We are not teaching people how to get under the hood. We are teaching people how to be behind the wheel. So I think that's one sad part of it. Moving on to really the ugly part, and I think I'll run very quickly on this one. Richard talked about briefly is cyber warfare. The next war is not going to be on anything, but it's going to be on cyber. We talked about the privacy invasion. That's truly the ugly part of the technology. But if I were to take another pick, you may have seen this guy's face on the internet. This guy's name is Satoshi Nakamoto. He is the considered, okay? He's the considered inventor of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the virtual currency in which the currency is created on the internet, traded on the internet. You can sell it to buy stuff. So this is and I put the picture of the book, which is God is a gamer, because there's a book now in India about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a virtual currency, which in my view is the relatively interesting part of the internet. If you looked at the Bitcoin price history, if you had owned a Bitcoin versus if you own a stock on the Bombay Stock Exchange, NSE or NYSE, over the 1-year period, the Bitcoin would have given you better result than these stock exchanges in the year 2014. So the Bitcoin is a great stuff. But if you look at it, how does Bitcoin come? This is a picture of a device called Bitcoin miner. So the Bitcoin miner is that in the electronic world, if I have a Bitcoin and I want to send it to you, somebody has to authenticate that transaction. And whoever authenticates the transaction gets a pie of that share. So you could actually install, every user on this room can actually install a Bitcoin miner. This is a computer which will authenticate the transaction. And these computers are being sold for anywhere between $200 to $2,000, and they actually generate money for you. And all of this money is outside the tax net, outside of the AML boundaries. That's really my ugly part of how the Bitcoin will actually become a trouble for us. The last but not the least is the e-waste. India is the significantly largest producer of the e-waste. That's something, so more and more technology being dumped. That's my last part of being ugly. Before I get to my emotional part of being interested about technology, is that learning a computer language will be more important than learning a human language, which will take away a lot of emotion, which will take away a lot of all that social media possibly could be converted into a robotics. So I think that's the sad part. But the good part which I feel about technology is that the number of emperors, the rulers, Alexanders of this world could not make the world speak their language, but it is the technology which has made us all speak one language, the language of computer. So with that, I say there are two kinds of spurs, the one which come through the door and the other by the window, and we got to be careful about the one which come through the window. Before I go, three things. Number one, technology will have a huge commercial and even more huge social value. And India is a country of 1.25 billion. I think there's a huge implication for us. You got to keep your mind open to new possibilities, because not the necessities, but it's the possibilities which will get us our next $1 billion. And if the last 3 years of technology development surprised you, you may like to visit your cardiologist over the weekend. I didn't know that we have on the panel one, but you could visit him. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think all three of you were so engaging that I didn't feel like stopping you in between, though that was our promise to each other. But having said that, there are still 8 minutes, so I'll skip my questions, and I think there are a lot of eager faces and raised hands as soon as I ask them for the questions. If you don't have, then of course I have many. Anybody has a question? Okay, you have a question. If somebody could pass on the mics quickly, and if you could please make sure it's a question, not a comment.
Yeah, it is.
And the shorter the question, the more questions we'll be able to have.
Thanks for sticking to the promise of not letting us sleep, first of all. And then the question is, like, in one of the previous sessions, it was discussed that India should try and develop its own Facebook, its own Google. But I personally find that regressive. Should we think on those lines? What's your view on that? But I personally feel that we should move on and maybe try and invent newer things other than reinventing the wheel by having a parallel Facebook and parallel Google.
Yeah, got you. Okay, let's collect a few and then I'll distribute them. Yes. Should we have our own Facebook or Google or LinkedIn?
What is going to be the impact of artificial intelligence and robotics on job creation, on the internet, and so also 3D printing?
Okay.
How do you see
artificial intelligence and its impact? Yeah, everybody is making notes. Yes, please.
How's technology going to resolve the language barriers?
How is technology going to solve the language barriers? Very interesting. I think we have a bunch. Let's start from you, Akhilesh. This time you get the first chance.
Okay, so maybe I can take one, and so that everybody else can take.
Yeah.
So I think I'll take the second one, because I thought that is very fascinating about the artificial intelligence and robotics. Here is something which I feel very strongly about, that we are moving away from foundational skills to applied skills. So if you look at the number of PhDs in India, what they were 20 years ago versus what they are significantly dropped. So to me, I have a huge problem with our education system, personal view, is that we are not creating foundational skills. So we will certainly be not the, given the current thing, unless things change dramatically, we will not be the leading provider when it comes to this. Because what is happening that the robotics and artificial intelligence is here to stay and possibly become more stronger and mainstream. It will possibly eliminate a number of knowledge workers' job on which we thrive. So I think the choice which we have is that either we move on to the mainstream and actually create artificial intelligence and technologies related to that, or we become somebody who can just chew us out. So that's my view.
Wonderful. Yes.
So I wanted to make a comment on two of those. The first, with regard to the next Facebook or Google, it's very ironic because a lot of the teams, whether it's Rajan or any of the other guys, are all Indian anyway. So in essence, to some degree, Indians did create all of these. But I would agree with you fundamentally that evolution and innovation is in our blood. This brings you to the second point about AI and all the other stuff. I agree with the comment that was made regarding education. We need to teach our kids how to innovate, how to think out of the box. When you have a test-driven system where all that's important is your scores on your exams, and you don't allow people to discover what they can learn, when you can't move people to the lifelong road for learning, then fundamentally you will never have their total genius tapped. I mean, my comment about the surgeon and the engineer is so apropos. And what we have to do is, rather than ask one thing or the other, artificial intelligence is only one realm. There's many, many others that we can develop, as well as many other Googles. We just have to decide how to bring our kids up so that they can learn. And I think all of us would contend that whatever you do, do your best at. Make it commercially viable, maybe. But the issue is the world doesn't need a lot more doctors and engineers. Actually, in this country, they do. But I would say what they need are people who can think and who can solve new problems. Finally, I'll leave you with the thought that it's not what you learn, it's how you learn it. And that skill is probably the more important of any of the others.
I'll just supplement one thought which came to my mind was, we have a university. And in our university, the very first month, we teach children how to ask a question. Actually, very surprising. Children have forgotten how to ask questions. Because when they were 4 years old, they used to ask on an average, and this is documented, 11 questions an hour. By the time they reach class 12, they ask one question in 11 months. So the reason is, every time they asked a question, somebody said, shut up, listen to me. And that's how they got built. So the curiosity will only come if you build an opportunity to question. So I think what you just mentioned was very right. Nishant, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I think I'll supplement a little bit of what was said. I think in terms of creating the next LinkedIn or Facebook here, you know,